good to see everybody today.
Amen.
Thank you again for another opportunity to be up here. So, there are a few things in life that we could always use, and because with food we eat and then we are satisfied temporarily, and then with water we drink and are satisfied for a while. However, there is one thing other than breathing that all of us Christians could use at every waking moment, and that is wisdom. Whether it be wisdom on if you should say this or that, or wisdom on what you should do with your life. Wisdom is important in every decision of life. And because of that, we should ask ourselves, all right, how can we get this wisdom? So let's see what James has to say about true wisdom by turning to James chapter 3, verses 13 through 18. Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes from above, but is earthly, natural, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exists, there is disorder and every evil thing. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without hypocrisy. And the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So we hear a lot about true wisdom, and one of the first things we see about it is that it leads to action. This is a common theme in James because he repeatedly hammers the point home that those who have true faith will show it through what they do. And it's no exception in the case of wisdom. James in verse 13 was asking those he was writing to, who among you is wise and understanding? And then he said, let him show by his good behavior. He is basically saying, if you think you are wise, prove it through your action. Some scholars suggest that this letter deals with opponents who claim wisdom from above, but cause strife on earth. And therefore, he is saying, saying wise things doesn't necessarily make you wise, but your behavior is a reflection of that too.
Okay.
The second thing we learn is that wisdom is demonstrated through good behavior in humility. The word gentleness in this passage means in humility, and in verse 14, James goes on to say that if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. And this raises the question, in what sense does selfish ambition lead someone to deny the truth? And James, I think, is most likely warning his readers that selfish ambition and arrogance leads people to put considerations about their own status above those that concern the truth. This makes sense when we think about how often lies stem from concern to defend one's own status in the eyes of others. And therefore, if we have the mindset of selfishness, that will ultimately lead to wrongdoing. We learn in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 2, that when pride comes, then comes dishonor, but with the humble comes wisdom. True wisdom will be manifested in a person of true humility. And here we see that with the humble comes wisdom. We also see that with pride comes dishonor. And as we see in verse 16, where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder in every evil thing. We see that while humility is the key to true wisdom, jealousy and selfish ambition destroys any possibility of receiving true wisdom. And why would that be? When we have selfish ambition or jealousy, we don't care about what God may have to say about something. All we care about is ourselves. And therefore, if we want to have true wisdom, we must remain humble and avoid selfish motives in what we do. We also learned that there is a certain wisdom that is not from God. And this wisdom is described as earthly, natural, and demonic. In other words, this wisdom is something that is opposed to God because it goes along with the way our world and society would think, rather than what we learn in the Bible. And we also see that it's demonic, and that means that this wisdom actually comes from demons. Now, as Christians, we don't have to fear the demons because they have no power over us, because Christ has emerged victorious over those forces. However, that does not mean that we shouldn't be discerning about what we entertain in our minds. That brings up the question, what type of wisdom should we entertain? James talked about a wisdom that is from above, and he describes it as wisdom that is pure, peaceful, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, and without hypocrisy. Let's go through these one at a time. Wisdom from above is first pure. In other words, this wisdom is without blemish or imperfection. It also is peaceful. This means that the wisdom from above should bring about harmony rather than division in people. Thirdly, it is gentle. This means that this should lead a person to not be bent towards aggression towards others. And then we see reasonable, which means willing to yield or obey. And those people will also show mercy and bear good fruits. And good fruits are the positive traits that result from true wisdom. And those who have the fruits are also the ones who will be peaceful and strive for peace. So how do we obtain this kind of wisdom? Well, we read early on in the book of James in chapter 1, verse 5, and James states, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him." So are you just striving to make a wise decision in something that you are going through? James tells us to go straight to God. The second thing to note is that if you are truly seeking godly wisdom, he will give it to you. God gives this wisdom out freely and generously. Therefore, you don't have to worry about God completely ignoring your request for wisdom. All you have to do is be humble enough to receive it. We have learned a lot today about true wisdom, but let's go over it just so we can remember it. We learned that wisdom leads to action, and that those who are wise will show evidence of that through the way that they live their lives. Wise people also do good things in humility. They don't do these good things with a, "Oh, I'm better than you" kind of thing. No, they are humble about it. And finally, if you want true wisdom, you can go to God, because he will give it to you generously. Now, all of this wisdom sounds good. However, you can't get the wisdom of God without accepting him as your Savior. Therefore, you can start today by realizing that you are a sinner who is in need of mercy, and by trusting in Jesus as your Savior. If you would like to do that today, come talk to me and I can talk to you about it more. And I will close with prayer. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for bringing all of us here together today. I pray that this message would penetrate our hearts and you would transform us. In Jesus' name, amen.